Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. You figured that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. I've made a decision that I may come to regret. There's like a non-zero chance I'll regret the decision that I've made today. But I'll let you in on it in case you haven't been following along over on the Russ Joy Show YouTube channel or on Twitter. I'm going to open today's show up in a very crude manner. I have a much better hopeful workaround at some point. But I have a way to bring people onto the show today. So if you've been out there for the past year and you've been saying to yourself, all I want to do is to go onto this show and to yell at Russ for his ridiculous take on the Eagles, the Flyers, the Sixers, the Phillies, today's your chance. All you have to do is send a DM to my Twitter handle, which you can find over in this direction, at JoyOnBroad. Send a DM there and I'll send you the link. You'll get to hop on the show. We'll go back and forth for a bit, and then I'll eventually have to kick you out, or you'll just have to know it's time to go. Am I concerned? Maybe. Possibly. I can already confirm Ford has sent me a message over on Twitter. So Ford, I think, is actually going to hop on the show today. God help us all. That's all I can say is God help us all. If you don't believe in God, then tree help us all. If you don't believe in trees, I don't know what to tell you. We're going to get to the phones. We'll go to the phones later on in the show. Not that far from now. But we will open it up to people as we go. So again, you can send me a DM over at JoyOnBroad, and I'll bring as many of you on as possible. Okay. Or maybe it'll just be Ford. Who knows? Chris Freed asks a very poignant question from the start of this, obviously because of what's going on in the news. Says, would Joy Media ever suspend the Russ Joy Show for comments made by Russ Joy? Yes. Yes. Joy Media would suspend indefinitely the Russ Joy Show for comments that Russ Joy makes on the Russ Joy Show. A complaint would have to be filed to the proper channels, probably over to Facebook, to the Joy Media Facebook page, or perhaps in a comment on a Joy Media video, and file the complaint. And then Russ Joy will monitor the situation. Russ Joy, the sole proprietor of Joy Media LLC, will monitor those comments and then will bring Russ Joy in for a formal hearing and ultimately make a decision. Could the show be placed? I have to tell you, I know I'm gonna upset people, I guess, but I don't really care. I'm gonna be honest because I've actually had some people in real life ask me what I thought of the Jimmy Kimmel thing and about Jimmy Kimmel being suspended indefinitely, which really does sound like fired, but they haven't said fired yet. I gotta be honest with you. I don't think Jimmy Kimmel's particularly funny. I don't think Stephen Colbert is particularly funny. I don't think that Jimmy Fallon's shtick is nearly as funny as it used to be. I don't really care about the late night shows. I also took out of my way to watch a Gutfeld, which also isn't exactly my cup of tea. When Conan was on, I didn't really watch Conan O'Brien. What did I say on this show about a month and a half ago? Craig Ferguson to me was like the ultimate pinnacle of what a late night host could be. His show was irreverent. It was hilarious. It knew not to take itself seriously. It knew not to go into the political sphere. You could turn your brain off at night. You could sit back, enjoy a little bit of good old-fashioned entertainment in late night when Craig Ferguson hosted the Late Late Show. Any burden, any baggage that you had throughout the day, you were able to drop that off and leave it at the door and then turn on the TV, watch the Late Late Show, and go to bed with a smile on your face. I don't get that feeling watching any of these late night people. I don't care where they are on the political spectrum. I don't care. I will say that on one hand, I got a little bit like, I saw the initial clip, the one that apparently led to a lot of the TV affiliates, Nexstar, Sinclair, saying they were going to pull Kimmel's show, they were going to preempt Kimmel's show. And I thought to myself, all right, well, he must have said something really bad. And then I went and I listened to the clip, and I said to myself, this isn't like incendiary. This wasn't like dancing on someone's grave. It wasn't that was deserved. There was nothing like that. And I sat back and I said, okay, if Jimmy Kimmel were doing this on his own show, on his own channel, through his own LLC or whatever, Would he get demonetized by YouTube? No. Would he get demonetized by any of the podcast platforms? No. He could say whatever he wants because it's his thing. But when you're somebody who hosts a show on someone else's platform, if it ultimately leads to that platform losing sponsors, losing advertisers, or in the case of Kimmel, losing the ability to send that show out through a ton of networks throughout the country, it kind of is at the discretion of the network to decide that they're going to pull the show. Now, the whole censorship thing has been brought up. Was the FCC chair involved? Was Trump involved in getting Kimmel off the air? I have no idea. But I will tell you that, I think that if you have an opinion on your own platform, you should be able to say whatever the hell you want. You can say really horrible, inflammatory things. And I think ultimately you should have that right because that is freedom of speech. If you're doing that on someone else's platform, you can't exactly be shocked or upset if things don't go well. Perfect example. The things that I say on the Russ Joy Show, within reason, are my opinions. They're my thoughts. I am ultimately responsible for what I say on my show. There's no one that I have to answer to for the Russ Joy Show. If I go over to Snow the Goalie, where we have a partnership with the Flyers, if I said something belligerent, incendiary about a player, if I threw out the idea of there being some kind of an awful story around a player, a current player, a former player, if I started to throw out unfounded allegations about a player, well, yeah, on one hand, I'm able to say it because it's technically under the Joy Media umbrella, but there is a partnership with the Flyers, and there are certain things that we journalistically have to uphold if we're going to say them on the show. And we also have to kind of be able to show receipts if we say certain things. And we also have to be willing to be called onto the carpet by the team if we say something that they ultimately think is unfounded, meritless, or could potentially bring back a significant negative blowback to the organization. It doesn't mean they can tell us what to say. Lord knows, if the Flyers ever came to me and said, you cannot talk about X, Y, or Z, we wouldn't do the show, or at least I wouldn't. I would just step away. There's your difference. When you are partnered with someone, if you're on someone else's platform, if I were sitting up at the Press Row show in the upcoming season and I threw out some unfounded allegation about a player and their spouse or something on the show while sitting in the Xfinity Mobile Arena, and I'm sitting at that desk and I say this thing, well then it's not just me speaking on behalf of myself. It's also potentially bringing heat on my co-hosts. It's also bringing potential heat on dear old intern Andrew working the board. It certainly brings a lot of heat on the communications team, any of the PR people involved with the Flyers, anybody who's ever been involved in that partnership. So I've had people who've said to me, don't you think that as somebody who's in the media, you should be worried about free speech? And I said, yeah, I do. But you also have to be cognizant that your opinions on something might not align with what the ultimate corporation or whoever you answer to, whoever's platform you're on, ultimately aligns with. And if they aren't happy or they feel like you've done a detriment to their business, they're going to pull you. It doesn't matter how much you have been a positive light or whatever to a fan base, to a viewership, to a listenership. If you screw up, there could be consequences. So you got that. I didn't exactly expect that to be a serious conversation here, but here we are. Let's see. Linda Joseph says, I'm sure Ant would love to suspend Russ for comments Russ makes. That's probably true. Mr. Twitster says, I've investigated myself and found myself guilty as hell, Russ. Amadeo asks to be the judge. Absolutely not. Ford thinks that the late night guys aren't funny. Chris Freed says Russ is preaching to the choir here. Yeah, just trying. Ford says it's in the job description to be funny. That's why Johnny Carson is a legend. Google a video of him explaining why he didn't get too serious or political. Just be funny. AJ over here says it would appear your birthday is coming up soon. Any plans? Going to get the green egg going? Yes, birthday is next week. I'm very upset about the age that I'm turning. You can let me know in the comments how old you think I'm turning. Hint, it's not as old as my 5 head and the ever-growing lines on my forehead from having 4 kids are. You can certainly guess. Read to Ford. Notes, answers the question of if a tree falls in the woods and no one is around to hear it, doesn't make a sound. His ratings were bad. Disney used the first excuse they could to get out of it. Well, I mean, so the Colbert of it all, that show was apparently losing a lot of money. I don't know how much ABC, Disney were losing on Kimmel's show. Were they losing money? Were the advertising dollars there? How bad were the ratings? How bad do the ratings need to be? Will there be a paradigm shift in late night? We can actually get to that in a sports context in a second. AJ's also right about this. Bill Barclay. I don't remember this name, so Bill, thanks for being here. Like the video, share the video, subscribe. Says Phillies Karen is going to have to steal another baseball to get back in the news. Oh, yeah. I'll note this one thing. I said, like, could there be a paradigm shift in late night TV? I think that there's a good chance there will be, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing. I want everybody to be honest, okay? If you're outraged that Jimmy Kimmel's show is suspended indefinitely, maybe canceled, if you were outraged when Stephen Colbert's show got canceled, but he has until like May or whatever, I want you to be honest. How often have you watched those late night shows? And I don't mean like watched a clip on social media. I mean actively sat down in your home or wherever and either watched it live or DVR'd it and watched it the next day. When's the last time that I do seem to remember when Jimmy Fallon took over the Tonight Show, that felt like appointment TV. The Roots were such an incredible band. Fallon had this like new energy to him. It felt like he was really shaking things up. And there was also kind of all of the palace intrigue, right? Because you had Conan, got the Tonight Show, and then it kind of felt like, ooh, did he get stabbed in the back? Leno kind of came back into the picture. Remember, Leno was doing like the dinner time or early prime time show for a bit. And then Fallon comes in, and so everybody wanted to see if it was going to work. And when Dave Letterman left and Colbert replaced him, remember, Colbert, it took a long time before he found his voice and like where he ultimately felt comfortable, which did end up kind of being more in that political sphere. Kimmel's a show that I've never really watched. I couldn't tell you how different the show is now versus what it used to be. Conan, I remember watching the Tonight Show initially when he went there, didn't exactly love the show, and I hadn't watched him prior to that, so I didn't have much of an opinion. I did watch the Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson, obviously. I tried watching the Late Late Show with James Corden, which I did not like. I mean, initially I thought it was kind of okay, but it's kind of like you follow a legend, and to me, Craig Ferguson was a legend. You follow the legend, it's really difficult to do it. You want to be the person who follows the legend, and that ultimately didn't come to fruition. And so that show's just gone. A paradigm shift's not a bad thing. If you think about sports, right? Put this in the sports context, okay? Morning shows have changed. Think about what you used to do as a sports fan in the morning a decade ago, 2 decades ago. Let me take you back into the time machine, right? Back to, I don't know, like, let's say 20 years ago, okay? God, that feels awful. Let's go back like 20 years. Let's go back to like 2005. Wake up with me. What was the first thing you did? So I was in high school. 20 years ago, I'm in high school. I wake up in the morning. I turn on my TV before school. I watch Sports Rise. I'm used to waking up to the sound of, Ron Burke, I guess, right, in the morning. Or Neil Hartman, or one of those hosts. I would watch, typically, the back half of Sports Rise. Then I would wait until Sports Rise would get to the same point, like a half hour later, right? So I'd start at, like, let's say, 6:15, and then I would watch until like 6:45. So I've now seen the back half of the show, the front half of the show, and then I switch over to Sports Center. And then you try to get the top 10 plays in or the not top 10 plays in. That was every morning, right? And then in the afternoon, you would get back just in time to maybe record either Comcast Sportsnet or ESPN, and you would have this toggle maybe back and forth. You do picture-in-picture on your TV if you had it, and I did, and it was great, where you'd go back and forth between like Daily News Live and then either Around the Horn or PTI, depending on the time. And then you would get yourself ready. Maybe go back over to Sports Center at like 6 o'clock. And then at 6:30, you'd switch back over to Comcast Sportsnet, get ready for pregame live. You'd watch the game. You'd do postgame. Then you'd switch back over to ESPN. That was like my every single day in high school. And even into college, a lot of it was the same idea. So like we'll even take that up into the early 2010s. Still had the same idea, but think about how different that is now. It's not just like you wake up and you go to SportsCenter. SportsCenter's on ESPN too. No. You wake up in the morning. The first show that you see at like 8 o'clock is Get Up, which is now being counter-programmed by Wake Up Barstool. Then you have First Take or whatever else is going over on FS1. FS1 to some extent maybe goes a little bit more old school ESPN where you're getting like the Colin Cowherd show. And then you're getting like another panel show, right, that Nick Wright is on. And if you're over on ESPN, I don't even remember what happens after First Take. Do they go back to SportsCenter now? I don't pay attention. And then there's like an NFL countdown show or an NBA countdown show. And then eventually you get back to SportsCenter. And if you decide to toggle back and forth, is there anything on Comcast Sportsnet, now NBC Sports Philadelphia, that moves the needle for you? I'm not sure that there is. But like, do you actively go out of your way now to watch pregame live the same way that you did 10, 15 years ago? I don't. You watch the game. When the game is over, do you stick around and watch postgame live? Yes and no. I'm going to get all of the clips. I'm going to get the uncensored clips of what's said in the locker room or the clubhouse from reporters on Twitter, so I don't necessarily need to watch postgame live immediately after the game. Am I going to flip back and forth between that and SportsCenter? Maybe. But what else is different now? User habits are different. So now you also have all the streaming services. All right, Phillies game is over. Let's go catch up on a show we were watching on Netflix or Paramount or HBO Max. The world is just so different now. I'm not convinced that the late night model, as we've always known it, is dead. I will just say that, like, if it is, it had a very long run. I'm just not sure that it's sustainable anymore. Late at night, are you actively going out of your way to watch Fallon or Kimmel or Colbert? If the answer is no, and instead your answer is to go to Netflix or one of the streaming apps to go watch stand-up, or maybe to go back and try to find a little bit of normalcy in your life, and maybe you go back and you watch a rerun of like The Office or something right on one of the streaming platforms, or maybe you decide to go way back in the Wayback Machine, you go on to Paramount, and you find like, I don't know, Rocket Power, and you turn on Rocket Power when you have the flu because it's the only thing that'll help you fall asleep. I don't know. Things are different now. So you can let me know in the comments. I just want to know. Connor says TV shows suck in general all around now. I think it really depends on where you're looking and the kind of TV that you're looking for. Joe Papel, who's typically in Florida, says hello from Anchorage, Alaska. Winter is coming. How about that? Ford says we need to laugh. So just make us laugh. Stop with the politics entirely. Be funny. I think that's probably fair. Connor Allen says used to watch the same episode of SportsCenter twice in a row. I agree. Here you go. Harvey Lichtenstein over on X. Harvey remembered to hit the video first and then go into old Periscope mode and send a comment. Says, I'm a 50-year-old man with children and a full-time job. I haven't seen 11:30 p.m. in years. I've managed to see it because I've been drinking espresso late in the day to stay up for Phillies games, but otherwise I'd probably agree. I took Bill Barkley back to a horrible time. Says 2006 is PTSD for a Flyers fan. Terrible team. Forsberg always crippled. And lose Patrick Kane in the lotto balls. Yeah. Connor, though, this is right. I have the Russ Joy Show. Thank you. Thank you. AJ says, I'm an avid watcher of the late night guys on YouTube. Never watch it live. That's fair. Listen, for some of these shows, it's about the overall market share that you get for late night. And some of the way that they evaluate how successful a show isn't just by the Nielsen ratings of the show live. There are other metrics about like that include like DVR and watching. I think it's up to 2 or 3 days beyond the initial airing. The difference obviously is like a one-off show that's only once a week. That probably matters a little bit more. How much are you focused in on a show that's 4 or 5 nights a week? Is somebody going back like 2 days later to watch the Monday episode? Obviously, social carries the day. Seeing clips on social media, seeing clips on Twitter, the idea is that it's going to draw you to their YouTube, which is monetized, maybe even make you feel so inclined to go watch the full episode via your cable provider or whoever you've cut the cord with. And if you have like a Hulu or a YouTube TV or a Fubo, you can go that route as well. All right. That was an unexpected diatribe on late night. Now, before I get into anything else, I have been told that a young man wants to hop on this show. And so I did say this. If you are interested in being on the show today, you just have to send a DM to me over on Twitter, @JoyOnBroad. And if you do, I will send you the link, assuming I know that you're not some crazy person. If you go over on Twitter and you send me a DM, I will send you the link to the show, and you can hop on the show for a second, kind of the modern version of a caller to a radio show. I had a phone line thing that I was working on for this show, and I decided like it's also kind of dumb and antiquated. So I don't know how to feel about it. But young Ford, I think, is going to be hopping on the show here for a second. Now, I do want to tell you, there are a couple of things I want to get to. Most notably, Joe Buck had the weirdest face turn in the history of face turns and actively defended the Tush Push. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. We'll look ahead to Eagles-Rams. But I actually have a lot of stuff to get to as well. Some positivity coming out of Flyers training camp. But before I do that, I've got to figure out if Ford is ready. It looks like Ford is showing me his desk, which is not what I'm looking for. This is part of the problem of trying to do anything where you try something new. The young man, I think I'm looking at his lap. All right, so we're not going to go there yet. No one needs to see Ford's lap. That just seems like a terrible idea. Chris Freed asked earlier, would Joy Media suspend the Russ Joy Show if Russ Joy said anything dumb? I don't know. I feel like there'd be a lot of getting banned here if I showed you what I saw from Ford. All right, he just dropped out. All right, let me get to the good stuff before I bring him on. And again, if you want to hop on the show, you can today. Joe Buck is probably one of the most reviled people in all of Philadelphia sports, right? How many times have you sat back and watched a Philadelphia sports game, whether it's an Eagles game or a Phillies game, and you've actively felt like Joe Buck is going out of his way to poo-poo all over the Philadelphia team? And in fairness, it's not just Philadelphia, right? A lot of times, fan bases in just about every city feel like the announcers hate their team. I don't know what the psychological condition is, but it does seem like pretty much across the board, people seem to believe that the announcers hate their team. You could be an Eagles fan, you could be a New York fan, a Boston fan, you could be an LA fan, a Vegas fan, it doesn't matter. You're going to feel like the announcers hate you and they like the other team significantly more. I want to go out to the most unexpected thing to ever happen, and that is that my dear, dear Joe Buck, and I say my dear, dear Joe Buck, went on to Good Morning America. And Joe Buck did something I never thought I would see. Joe Buck actively defended a Philadelphia sports team. And not just defended a Philadelphia sports team, he took the side of a Philadelphia sports team in what has become one of the dumbest, most contentious debates in all of sports right now. And that, of course, is the Tush Push. But I want you to hear what noted Philadelphia sports hater Joe Buck had to say about the Tush Push. Listen to George Stephanopoulos, by the way. He messes this up. Go ahead. Here we go.
You make the argument for banning the push tush?
No.
All right, hold on. Let's re-rack that. Go ahead, Stephanopoulos. Do it again.
Banning the push tush?
The what?
No.
The push tush?
The what?
No.
The push tush?
What?
The push tush?
No. No, I can't. I mean, you know, as the league says, and as the Eagles say, stop it. Figure out a way to stop it. And nobody's figured.
So there you go. Joe Buck, voice of reason. Who the hell would have ever expected that Joe Buck was going to be the guy to stand up for the Tush Push, or as Stephanopoulos calls it, the push tush? Stop it. If you don't like the play, stop the play. Okay, keep going, Joe Buck. We're gonna let you roll. Hold up, let him cook.
Figure out a way to do it.
Or figure out a way to do it. And the difference is the Eagles have a quarterback that's running that can squat over 600 pounds.
I don't know if you've heard that or not. Jalen Hurts, very strong base, 600 pounds. The man can squat. Yeah.
So they took advantage of a
Hey, honest question. Do you think Stephanopoulos knows what a squat is? Let's continue.
guy that's on their team that can do it, and nobody can stop it. So too bad.
Over 600 pounds.
Over 600 pounds.
Don't worry, I won't
Look at Stephanopoulos. There is not a chance in hell that guy's ever done a squat in his life.
ask you what you can squat, Joe.
I don't know.
Can you make the
I just can't believe in all of the discourse, right? Everybody's been talking about the Tush Push for years now. Stephanopoulos, the push tush. Good God. 600 pounds. All right, now I'm going to try to do something we haven't done on the show before. We're going to try to go out to the phones. And I believe that currently on the line, somebody that I should be able to hear right now, and that many of you will be able to hear, is now Ford. Ford, are you there?
Russell, I'm here.
Hello, Ford. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. How about yourself?
I'm delightful. What do you want to talk about, Ford?
Oh boy, you give me the open forum. Well, how about football? F-U-T-B-O-L.
I think we might boot Ford from the show.
I'm joking. I'm kidding. Let's discuss the Phillies and whether or not we have faith in their bats, or do we think we're going to see the exact same thing come playoff time?
It's a great question, Ford. You know, we spent most of the season saying that the Phillies had the same lineup. They had virtually everything back from last year and from the year before, quite frankly, that led to underwhelming at best results. And they had this masturbator pickup at the deadline. And it does feel like he has changed the entire complexion of this lineup. He does give you the ability to have another guy that can mix it up at the top of the lineup. He's done tremendously in lieu of a Trey Turner. He's brought solid defense to the table. And you want to talk about the lineup, good right-handed bat, hard to come by in this lineup. Taking a little bit of pressure off of Nick Castellanos, who no longer feels like he has to do everything. I feel okay about the lineup right now. Now, do I feel great about the lineup going into the playoffs? No, because we have watched the likes of any combination of Turner, Schwarber, Harper, Real Muto, Castellanos, Bohm, Stott, Marsh, all kind of succumb to the pressure of the postseason. But I wouldn't say that it's dead on arrival right now, because it does feel like they are getting stronger as the season goes on, the direct inverse of last season. Ford, you've been critical of the lineup, if memory serves me correct, as you've commented on YouTube all these times. Do you feel any better about this lineup?
You know, I do. I feel positive. My only thing, and I've said this on X, and I've talked about it with friends as well, Connor knows, is that really it's all just a bit of a crapshoot. Baseball is so up and down that even though it's so high right now, we know it could go so low at the drop of a hat. And we're just going to hear Rob Thompson say, well, the bats went cold. What are you going to do? Oh, shucks. There's no real empirical data to put my trust in other than I hope it works out. But my eyeballs are making me feel good now. I just hope it lasts. I hope that if there is a mechanical reason that is sort of causing them to play so well, that it just sticks and that they're able to kind of continue to follow those things. But if I'm honest, I just feel like baseball is so haphazard that they're doing really well, but they could also be doing really poorly at the drop of a dime.
Are you worried at all about the bye that they're going to end up locking in? We've seen it over the last few years. Teams that get that bye don't look nearly as crisp as those who have to go and win a wild card series. Are you worried at all, even if the Phillies bats are hot going into the postseason, that layoff of that first round, that wild card round, is ultimately going to kind of reset things and maybe let them get back in their heads about, failures in years past?
You know, I'm going to say no, and I'll tell you why. I go back to the haphazard nature. I just think that if you're on a hot streak, maybe it's simply because you are. And again, if there's something mechanical where, Schwarber has learned to swing this way, or Harper has found the secret to swinging a certain way or stepping a certain way or whatever it is, if there is something that they can attribute it to, I think it'll stick. But conversely, I don't think that if they take time off, the voodoo man's going to come to town and, oh no, they're going to lose their mojo. I just feel like, baseball's a weird one, man. Like, I just really do. I don't think we can equate it with football. I don't know that we can equate it with basketball. It's just a goofy sport. And so, no, I don't think the bye concerns me. I just get concerned because historically we've seen, for whatever reason, the Phillies in the playoffs. Here we go again, right? That's all. Now, look, I do think you made good points the other day when you said they've faced adversity. They've shown the Mets got close, but what'd they do? They squashed them. They went out to LA. They got some wins. I feel good about that. That is undeniable. So I feel pretty good about that.
Look at this, a little bit of Friday positivity from Ford. All right, Ford. Thanks for hopping on the show.
Thank you, sir. My pleasure.
There goes Ford. Ladies and gentlemen, you may not have heard him before, but there he is. Let's not go so far as to say iconic, but you've seen him in the comments for a long time, and now you've heard the voice of Ford. What you didn't see is that he looks exactly like Phil Dunphy from Modern Family. He did not go video for this appearance. Now, again, if you want to be like Ford or not and join the show, you can. You just have to send a DM to me over on Twitter at JoyOnBroad. I'll send you the link, and you can also hop on the show before we roll out today. Maybe we'll roll it out going forward. I can tell you that in the midst of all the things that I've been thinking about doing for this channel memberships is a thing. I'm on the fence about it. There's an easier way for me to get the link if people wanted to call in or whatever. So, we'll figure it out. Let's see. All right. I want to go out to something that maybe makes us feel a little bit better going into Sunday's game. Remember, Eagles take on the Rams. We got to see a snowy game last year in the postseason, and it was one of those games that you never totally felt 100% great about in the moment. You thought the Eagles have the better ground game. You just hope Saquon Barkley's not going to blow out a tire, right? And ultimately, he has a monstrous game. He breaks open multiple huge runs, scores that one touchdown where he goes and he has himself a nice little slide. You're going to see the Eagles take on the Rams this weekend. And if you have been concerned, okay, if you've been concerned about the Eagles' play, especially in the first 2 games this season, where the offense hasn't looked dynamic, we have to be fair. It's not a flashy offense. It's been good enough to get wins. It's been efficient enough to get wins. Jalen Hurts has not been willing to put the Eagles in position to turn the ball over, which is kind of an important thing if you're trying to win games. I want to go out to something that Dan Orlovsky compiled. And listen, he's not the only person on earth who's put this together, but he is the person who I saw do it on Twitter today. And so I thought it was a pretty damn good tweet. We're going to go out to Orlovsky here. This is incredible, he says. Here are the Eagles' last 19 games. Last 19 games. And we've talked about the fact that games that Jalen Hurts starts and ends, he's been incredible. Here are the last 19 games. Win 20-17, win 24-20, win 40-22, win 55-23, win 28-22, win 22-10, win 20-13, win 41-7, loss 33-36. That was the game where Jalen Hurts got knocked out with a concussion against the Commanders. And if you remember, they had a lead late in that game, and the defense fell apart. Offense got inefficient. Defense couldn't get off the field, and they blew that game in Washington. Could have been a win, probably should have been a win, and it ultimately wasn't a win. All right, win 27-13, win 22-16, win 24-19, win 37-20, win 26-18, win 34-6, win 28-23, win 37-17, win 28-3, win 20-16. That's incredible. I mean, if you take out, and I know we can nitpick, right? We can cherry pick certain stats, certain games, certain situations, right? You could do that. Like after week 1, talked about the fact that Hurts went 19-23, and we said, well, 3 of those were throwaways and 1 was a drop. So he was really 19 of 19 on passes that he tried to get to a receiver, and one of them was a drop. And you can say that's cherry picking because technically it is, right? Because he ultimately finishes 19-23. But if you look at that and say, when Jalen Hurts starts and ends a game, his team is damn near unbeatable. Over the last 19 games, that has been the case. The only game they lost on that list happens to be one that Hurts got knocked out in the first quarter with a concussion and could not finish the game. Now, JR97 makes an interesting point. Everyone gives Hurts the credit, but the D didn't give up more than 23 points in any of those 19 games. And that is a thing that we talked about a lot on the show last year, that the defense had been so damn elite, you didn't have to put up beaucoup points. You were able to win lower scoring games because of how good the defense was. And that is fair. All right, if you think like JR97 does, if you sit back and say to yourself, the real reason that the Eagles have had the success isn't totally dependent on Hurts, it's the defense, I would say to you that it is probably both. Both things can be true. You have to remember, so much of why the defense has been able to be as intense and as clean as it's been over those last 19 games is because Jalen Hurts has maintained possession in these games. Saquon Barkley has been able to wear out a lot of clock through the ground game being as efficient as it's been. And so the defense isn't consistently on the field. Jalen Hurts, by virtue of not being a guy who wants to take stupid chances and run the risk of turning a ball over 2 plays into a drive or having a ton of 3-and-outs, he runs an efficient offense. It uses clock the appropriate way, and that allows the defense to get better rested for when they come back out on the field. Now, some might think that that's not a critical thing. I would argue it's pretty damn important, especially if you're a 300-plus pound lineman and you're either trying to block for a Saquon Barkley or a Jalen Hurts, or conversely, you're trying to get to the quarterback or stuff the run. I'm pretty sure that you would like to have a little bit of time in between drives, especially on defense. So those two things, it's like a symbiotic relationship. It works out very, very well. An efficient offense that can eat some clock and a defense that oftentimes is able to get off the field pretty quickly and force a 3 and out. They work well together. If Hurts were more inefficient, if Hurts were a guy who gave you 3 and out after 3 and out, or a guy who gets 2 to 4 plays into a drive and hands off an interception, fumbles the ball and gives the opposition possession within their own, 40-yard line or whatever, that's a lot harder on a defense. But because that offense is able to be as efficient as it is, it helps the defense. Now, the defense, on the other hand, often gives you great field position, right? Because that defense also has a propensity for forcing turnovers. And sometimes those turnovers end up coming in the opposition's own end, and it gives Jalen Hurts in this offense a short field to work with. It's very hard to find the kind of success that the Eagles have had without having a solid offense and defense together. I would challenge just about anyone. Give me an example of a recent Super Bowl team that had an exceptional or almost exceptional offense and a piss-poor defense and won the Super Bowl. Give me a team that had an exceptional or damn near exceptional defense that had a piss-poor offense. It doesn't happen a lot. Sometimes you'll see a team that has like an above-average offense and an above-average defense, and that's enough on aggregate to win, to get you into the position to win a Super Bowl, and maybe you have a better day than the opposition. Might not be as talented of a team if you stack up all the parts head-to-head. But this Eagles team is just a very, very well-built team. It was last year, and it once again will probably be a very good defense again this year. JR97 says, would other QBs be 19-0 with that defense? No. I could tell you that I would say that there are definitely quarterbacks in this league that would not be 19-0 with that defense. And it all comes back to what I just got done saying. There are quarterbacks in this league that have terrible decision-making. There are quarterbacks in this league who throw across their body, who can throw across the field, who make boneheaded decision after boneheaded decision, that make stupid throws into triple coverage and turn the ball over. And what should be a somewhat lengthy drive that gives the defense a break, instead put the defense back out on the field and oftentimes lead to that defense kind of wearing out. And if you remember, this happened against the Bucs. Was it last year? And it happened against the Bucs in the playoffs in 2023. And it happened in the game against the Chiefs, or against the Commanders last year when Hurts got hurt. Defense ended up spending an inordinate amount of time on the field in the second half because the offense couldn't get anything going. So no, I would say that there certainly are quarterbacks who cannot play as efficiently, who can't command an offense the same way, and would not be 19-0. It doesn't mean that no other quarterbacks could do it. It means that there are certainly some that would not. Okay. I want to go out to something that I have seen that's been positive. And again, if you want to call into the show, you can. Shoot me a DM over on Twitter @JoyOnBroad, and I'll bring you on. The Philadelphia Flyers. If you have been looking for some positives to come out of camp, the good news is there's an abundance of good news seemingly coming out of Flyers training camp. One of the big things, and this should not come as a surprise, one of the big things that we are seeing, that we are hearing, that you're seeing all over Twitter each day, but especially on Thursday as training camp opened, was some people alluding to, and this is mostly players, alluding to John Tortorella no longer being around. The quote was thrown out there, a lot fewer NASCAR laps. Obviously, the rope is gone. There was a very interesting quote that came out from Sean Couturier about Tortorella. Now, if you remember last year, Sean Couturier was not a big fan of John Tortorella. 2 seasons ago, Tort started playing some mind games, was benching, scratching Sean Couturier. We knew that probably wasn't going to go over very well with the captain. It wasn't going to go over well in the locker room. There was a good chance that was going to cause Tortorella to lose the locker room. And if you remember, this was all while the Flyers were trying to apparently go after some bullshit playoff spot that was never truly in play. Last year, Sean Couturier came on Snow the goalie, and in no uncertain terms alluded to the fact that there were still some lingering issues, and his goal, another year removed from another back surgery, was that he wanted to have a return to form and prove who he is and who he was, a guy who was a sulky winner. He wanted to prove that he could get back to that form or damn near close to it. But there was a quote that came out on Thursday that kind of gives you a little bit of insight into how that locker room is probably approaching this season with Rick Tocchet as the coach rather than John Tortorella. And Bill Meltzer put this one out over on Twitter on Thursday. Meltzer tweets, Sean Couturier said that he's had more conversations in the last couple of months with Rick Tocchet than he had over several years with John Tortorella. Let that one sink in for a second. And before you bring your pro or anti-Torts bias to the table, let's break that down. Let's unpack it for a sec. Sean Couturier, captain of the team. Named captain, by the way, while John Tortorella was the coach. Sean Couturier said he's had more conversations in the last couple of months with Rick Tocchet than he had over several years with John Tortorella. Think about that. Now, again, I said, put away your pro or your anti-Torts bias for a second. I've been pretty clear about the fact that I don't think Tortorella was the right guy at the right time for this team. The only reason I was ever happy that John Tortorella was made the coach is because it was going to certainly expedite the firing of Chuck Fletcher, and it did. And that was a great thing for the Flyers. But if you look at that tweet, if you look at that quote, the captain of the team tells you he's already talked to this new coach who's only been around for a few months, more than he talked to the prior head coach over several years. Now, I don't know about you, but if you are the leader of the team, if you're the guy who on ice is supposed to be a conduit between the coaching staff and the rest of the players, you're supposed to be the guy that can be leaned on from a whole bunch of different directions, right? Front office is going to talk to you. Coaches are going to talk to you. The team is going to talk to you. You are expected to be the leader in that locker room. Somebody makes sense of it. Somebody makes sense of it to me that Tocchet has already had more conversations with Couturier than Tortorella did over several years. And then come back to me and tell me that that was a tenable situation. That John Tortorella and Sean Couturier's relationship was a tenable one. Tell me that if the Flyers hadn't ultimately kind of had their hand forced in firing John Tortorella because he said some dumb shit to Cam York last year in the midst of a whole bunch of other things, tell me how that would have been a good situation if John Tortorella had returned again as head coach, if he had barely talked to his captain. Tell me how that makes sense. And if you're a big culture guy, if you're somebody who's very high on the idea of culture, and you were eating that shit up for years, ever since John Tortorella was there, Torts is going to restore that Flyers identity. Torts is going to tell these guys they suck. He's going to yell at them. And he's going to be just as frustrated as we are. When they don't finish a shift, he's going to be in their face just like I'd want to be. He's going to tell them to shoot the puck just like I'd yell from, the top level of Wells Fargo Center. It was all bullshit. I mean, I told a lot of people, right? The Torts culture thing was a lot of bullshit. There is a positive in the work ethic that you have to have, right? And Matvei Michkov appears poised to have a massive sophomore year in the NHL. And he did speak highly of his relationship with and his interactions with John Tortorella. I also don't expect a guy who's like 20 years old, who doesn't speak English as his native language, to go out of his way and say, I did not like John Tortorella. He was total prick to me, and he made me very upset. I did not like him. I think he is an idiot. I didn't expect that, right? Maybe he felt like that. Maybe he didn't. There are some guys who might have benefited ultimately from Torts being their coach. But on the whole, the idea of instilling this culture only matters if you're keeping around a good chunk of the players on the team. Now, the Flyers do still have some of those guys, but let's keep in mind, they spent at least like 2 years with some of these guys getting, kind of, I don't want to say indoctrinated by the Torts mentality, but kind of living under that rule. And they're gone now. They play in Calgary. Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost, gone. Wade Allison was here, gone. I mean, if you think about it, right? By the time the Flyers are ready to compete, whenever that is, say 2026, if they manage to get a really good free agent next offseason, say 2027, most of the team that was here with John Tortorella will not be here. So that whole idea of the culture that you were trying to install with him as the head coach mostly falls on deaf ears, mostly doesn't translate because those guys aren't going to be here. Yeah, just saying, really quick, that's all. Let's see, where's this? Kevin at iRock Philly asks, is this the change in Flyers coaching similar to the Phillies going from Girardi to Thompson? Tocchet more of a player's coach. That one's tricky. It's tricky for a few reasons. While I would say that Tocchet is a bit more of a player's coach, I don't want that to get kind of misinterpreted as being something that is a total negative, right? So if you're a Flyers fan and you're hoping that there's still going to be somebody who's going to be willing to crack skulls from time to time, you're still going to get that. Like, you'll still get that with Tocchet. But will he have a better overall relationship with the guys in that locker room? I would say good chance. Think about a guy like Quinn Hughes, who everybody's going to want to go after if he doesn't re-sign out in Vancouver. Quinn Hughes was devastated that Rick Tocchet left. And there's not a single soul when Tocchet ultimately left Vancouver that said, you know what? It's a good thing that Rick Tocchet's gone. Remember, Vancouver's ownership wanted him to re-sign. They wanted him to come back. But then they did say that in negotiating, they kind of felt like his heart was somewhere else. And that ultimately turned out to be Philadelphia with the Flyers. There are a lot of guys in this league that do respect Rick Tocchet. And he is probably a much more relatable human being to them than John Tortorella. Now, again, it doesn't mean that Torts wasn't relatable to some guys. There are some guys who said on a human level, Torts would check in, was a good dude. Would Cam York feel that way? I don't know. Would Sean Couturier feel that way? I don't know. Chris Freed says, unpopular opinion, Tocchet won't be the coach when they're ready to contend. I disagree. Because it also depends on what your definition of contend is. For a Stanley Cup? Probably not. Although, you do have a few shortcuts. There are some absolute bona fide, franchise-changing studs that are going to be available in the offseason of 2026. You get any of them, your contention window has just opened. You don't get any of them, you're probably still looking at like another year or two until you're trying to be like a middle of the conference or maybe a top 3 team in the conference if you get on a nice hot streak at some point in the season. A lot of it's going to come down to goaltending. There's no making head. Like, you cannot win in this league with mediocre goaltending. Sam Ersson has a lot on his shoulders this year. Dan Vladar is going to have a lot on his shoulders to prove that he can be ready if and when Ersson gets hurt. Ersson has to be able to prove that he can be a number 1 and that his groin isn't going to fall apart like it did last year. Casual Warzone guy says the only definition of a contender that matters is contend for a cup. And I think we can mostly all agree. But can you potentially get to a point where you say, all right, based on what the Flyers have been, dog shit, would them getting to a place where they're like the 8th seed in the conference, would that be a success this year? I would say yes. Because as I've said many times already, I do not believe this Flyers team is going to be in the lottery next year. And if they are, it's going to be like the last team in the lottery. I do not see a scenario where the Flyers are a horrific team. This isn't going to be a top 5 pick Flyers team going into next year's draft. And if it is, something will have gone horribly wrong. If you look at the level of talent they are bringing back, if you look at the addition of a guy even as simple as Trevor Zegras, right, who is a competent center with some offensive dynamic ability, that automatically makes you a better team. Has to. Whenever the hell Rasmus Ristolainen comes back in the lineup, in theory, it's going to make them a better team. And then hopefully they'll, realize that for the last 2 years, they've been unwilling to trade a guy who can't stay healthy. And maybe they'll move him. And maybe not. We'll see. The hope is obviously that some combination of Ersson and Vladar is going to be better than the weird 3-ring circus of Ersson, Fedotov, and Kolosov a season ago. If your goaltending is even slightly better, remotely better, you should be competing for a playoff spot this year. I do foresee a scenario where Matvei Michkov takes another step. I can see an 80-plus point season for Matvei Michkov this year. I totally think 35 goals is well within the realm of possibility. I think this power play is going to be much improved with a Trevor Zegras on it. And I think you're going to see Matvei Michkov's production with the man advantage jump to another level. Now, I could be crazy. It might be insane to say 80-plus season for a second-year player, but I think he's going to be that good. And in fairness for the Flyers, he kind of has to be that good. Michkov kind of has to be the exception to the rule. He's got to be a guy who's able to find that superstar form sooner than later. Because again, with some massive free agents coming up in 2026, you want to have at least one piece that you can sell to a free agent and say, this is a guy you want to play with. Let's see. Joe Papel says hockey purgatory at 8 or 8. Need another top 5 pick. It's not happening. They will not actively try to get themselves into the bottom. Will not happen. Casual Warzone guy says they need to be in the lottery for another good piece. They need one more top prospect. Luchenko and Nesbitt don't move the needle enough. I think Nesbitt's going to be a good player. I do. I think Nesbitt is ultimately going to be a player who really does matter. I think Nesbitt is going to develop. And if he can get that first... Remember, when we had him on, I think it was on draft night, on Snow the Goalie, and then we had him later at Dev Camp. He said his number one goal is to work on that first stride, to break out of his own defensive zone and take the puck the other way. If he's able to increase the speed and increase the power on that first stride, Nesbitt is going to look like a steal in this draft. Nesbitt will be a guy that we're all going to say, holy shit, how lucky did the Flyers get to get Martone and Nesbitt in the first round? That was a generational draft. That was the kind of draft that turned the Flyers' fortunes around. I'm not high on Luchenko. I am not telling you that Luchenko is going to be flop. I'm not telling you that Luchenko is a waste of space. I am just not a big Jet Luchenko believer right now. It's going to take a lot to impress me. A guy who was a first-round pick who I thought was a reach cannot be a guy that people are saying, oh, well, you know, he has all the qualities of a third liner. That's not good enough for a first-round pick. That's essentially kind of like a, you know, Lawton-esque. All right, let me see. There were a couple of other things to get to here. We had a funny moment. I mentioned both Trevor Zegras and Matvei Michkov. This video came out today. Apparently, Zegras and Michkov ended up going head-to-head in a face-off. And I guess after Zegras won the face-off against Michkov, he made Michkov do push-ups. So here you go. This is kind of ridiculous, but this is, and you'll see him right over here. There's number 39. There's Matvei Michkov. He loses the face-off to Zegras, and he has to drop down. I don't know what kind of push-ups those are. I wouldn't say those are full push-ups. All right, we want to believe in Matvei Michkov. I wouldn't say that those are exactly great push-ups, but that's a fun moment. Now, I mentioned the fact that Zegras was, you know, really hyped up about winning that face-off battle against Michkov. And the reason that I bring it up is because Zegras is apparently very interested in improving what he can do in the face-off circle. And it came up because Zegras actually told the media at training camp that he has enlisted Sean Couturier for help. But he didn't do it because he was looking at NHL.com. He didn't do it because he's played against Sean Couturier in the past and decided, oh, I know that Couturier is just a bona fide stud in the face-off circle. No. Trevor Zegras was playing Chell. He was playing NHL, the video game. And this is a quote that he gave to the media at training camp. Trevor Zegras says he went up to Sean Couturier for face-off tips. Quote, I was playing the new video game, and his X factor is face-offs. So I went right to him. I was like, what do you got for me? So there you go. So there, like, what a weird thing, but a funny thing. There's your generational divide. Trevor Zegras figures out that Sean Couturier is a good face-off guy because it's his X factor on the most recent NHL video game. Kind of funny. Kind of funny. Bondarenko's here. Says afternoon all. Hello, Greg. Greetings. Now I saw Joe Papel claims that he put a video up over on Twitter or sent it to me. And Joe, I don't have the video. I wish I did. If I did, I would show it. It has not uploaded from what I can tell. unless you're on a different account now on the Twitter than I remember. But apparently Joe Papel has a moose video from up in Alaska. So, don't know. All right. Last thing I wanted to get to also had to do with Flyers. Has to do with Matvei Michkov specifically. I want to see this video that Jordan Hall put out. And this is the thing that maybe you get the most excited for if you're a Flyers fan. We joked on the show about a week ago that people were kind of freaking out about, the shape Matvei Michkov was in. And I think it was Evil Gritty was the one who expanded Michkov horizontally to make him look super chunky, just to mess with people, to troll people. But this was a video that came out of training camp. And this is the kind of thing that has to get you excited if you're a Flyers fan. Here's young Matvei Michkov. I just want you to watch this play as it kind of develops. He lays out a dude. I think that's Ty Murchison. He lays this poor guy out. That's Murchison. He lays his ass out, gets the puck back, dishes it down low, sets up a goal. Now, what we have learned so far from training camp is that Michkov has been absolutely everywhere. One of the things that's a big positive that has come out of training camp as well is that Alex Bump has looked very good. And a guy that we weren't talking about a lot last year, and a guy who was not at dev camp, but has definitely made himself known at training camp, Nikita Gerbenkin. Remember, back check, forecheck, paycheck? Seems like there could be a little bit of chemistry between he and Michkov. And when you're starting to look into this upcoming season, I think about the characters, right? Because characters are important in a hockey locker room. Bundy will always tell you, he will always admit that he was a character guy in the locker room. He was somebody that would try to bring some levity to the locker room. Gerbenkin seems like that guy, man. Every single time he talks to the media, huge smile on his face. After the rookie game, the first rookie game I think it was, when he scored the overtime winner against the Rangers, huge smile on his face. That's the kind of positivity, that's the kind of energy you need in the locker room. And as you start to turn that page from a very rough few years under John Tortorella to this new outlook, trying to actually win games and not be sellers at the deadline, according to Keith Jones. Rick Tocchet is the head coach. Trevor Zegras brought in. And you start to think about what could be and the positives that could happen for this team. You see stuff like that. You see guys like Gerbenkin with a big smile. You see Michkov busting his ass in training camp. It starts to make you feel good about what could happen with your team, your town, your Philadelphia Flyers this season. So, I will be back on Monday here on the Russ Joy Show. But I do have to get going. I just realized how late it is, and I've got to get kids off the bus. So, last thing here before we head out, and somebody called this out in the chat, but this is the thing that we'll go into the weekend just kind of taking a look at, and it's Rick Tocchet on the ice with Matvei Michkov, working on Michkov's one-timer with him. And here you go. There's your head coach out on the ice, working on the one-timer with Matvei Michkov. There's a little bit of positivity on your Friday. This ended up being a very Flyers Friday. We didn't get back around to Eagles-Rams. Eagles are going to win. It might not be pretty, but they'll win, and we'll be back on Monday here on the Russ Joy Show. Until then, I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart, and it's also the name of the show. I will talk to each and every one of you on Monday here on the Russ Joy Show. Have a great weekend, everybody. Talk soon.